Welcome to Harry Cole Saves the West, the show where American grit meets British backbone. And nobody embodied that British backbone quite like Margaret Thatcher. The Iron Lady would have been 100 years old today, and the impact of her 11-year premiership still seared on politics on both sides of the Atlantic. In the 12 years since his mother's death, her son Sir Mark Thatcher has never spoken about that legacy, last giving an interview in 2009. Well, until tonight. Sir Mark, a remarkable day. Welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having us.
How does it feel to see your mother's impact and legacy still debated and revered 100 years on?
Well, I mean, I think actually she'd be very impressed, but very impressed and happy by it. I think particularly so that most of her policies are still being actively discussed and applied in today's political environment. Which
of those policies do you think she would have been most proud of?
Well, I think it's how long have you got?
Yeah, we've got plenty of time.
I think two things particularly. I mean, obviously the whole range of her fundamental truths, the right of a man to work as he wishes, to the right to own their own property, to have the state as a servant, not a master. These are all core aspects of her policies, and the fact that the basic fundamental core of institutional life today is the family, not the state. These were all things that she believed in, and she believed in small government, not large government. And all the things these things allowed her, or allowed the nation and all the people in it, to thrive to the best of their ability, and that was incredibly important. The other thing, I mean, from her achievement aspects, the thing I derive perhaps most pride from is the fact that she allowed, or she created policies in which 1 million council houses were sold to their occupants. And so there are 1 million more homeowners today as a direct result of her policies than there would have been otherwise. And I think that's particularly one of the largest parts of her legacy, and I know that she would derive great pleasure from that.
It's clear she transformed Britain. She's got plenty of critics that say she divided it as well. How do you reconcile those two legacies? Obviously, she was an incredibly popular Prime Minister on one hand, but inspired an incredibly unpopular reaction on the other hand.
But I think you see, to a large extent, I mean, I think it's like, for instance, the referendum on Brexit. I mean, the nation was divided about the referendum on Brexit. I'm not saying that Prime Minister Cameron was wrong to have a referendum at all. But nevertheless, even after the referendum, which was a specific answer, if you will, the nation still remained divided by it equally.
Yeah.
So I think that that's just the state of the political system as it is.
And do you think that her legacy will always be in this country one of division, or one of? How do you see it? Where do you see it?
I mean, I think my mother was known for her policies, particularly in respect of the critical importance of private enterprise, rather than. I mean, governments do not and cannot create wealth. Private enterprise creates wealth. Much as the government would like to think, any government would like to think it can create wealth, it can't. And so it's down to, and it's the role of government, and she felt strongly that the role of government should be to enable people, to allow them to get on and do the best for themselves.
This is a transatlantic show. She has almost a greater reputation and more revered in America than she possibly is or deserves to be in this country. I know, obviously, she remains deeply popular within the Conservative Party, within the right, but it strikes me that her reputation in America is actually on those key core values, and as you say, about the family, about the free enterprise, about the centre of the family rather than the state. It's a global legacy, isn't it?
Well, it's very kind of you to say so. I think that's probably true. I mean, I think I was recently in Hungary last week unveiling a statue, actually, to my mother in Milanaris Park, which was fantastic. And so clearly her legacy and her policies, which she held to be so important, are now becoming attractive and more successful globally. I think as far as the United States is concerned, she was always popular over there because the United States is a very can-do society. It's very open. I'm not saying that the UK is not, but the style of politics in the United States and the style of everything in the US is slightly different from the UK.
A more presidential system, you might.
Well, no, don't forget. I mean, what's it say on the Statue of Liberty? Send me your huddled masses, yearning to be free. So the United States is born of a philosophy, yes. Freedom. Whereas other European countries, and the UK is one of them, is born of a history and a culture, which is slightly different.
And she helped to end the Cold War. I mean, that's no mean feat, right? Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher. Those two will go down in history.
It was an extraordinary period in politics at that time. You had two leaders, both of whom believed strongly in the same policies. That of the critical importance of the free market economy. Both nations were emerging from a period of economic stagnation for a whole raft of reasons, not anything else. And they were able to cooperate jointly on a wide range of politics, not only, shall we say, business issues, but other issues as well. So their cooperation, and also, by the way, the cooperation of President Gorbachev at the time, they created an extraordinary period over 8 or 9 years where everything moved positively. The world economy grew faster than any other period since World War II. So I think it was, as you say, an extraordinary period.
Do you think she would have? What would you think she would have made of Donald Trump? She obviously had a close relationship with Reagan.
I think in all politicians, I think it's extremely important, and she would think it's extremely important, that they have their own beliefs. And that's very, very important. And clearly, President Trump believes strongly in the market economy. He has very clear ideas of what he wants to do and how he wants to do them. So in that regard, the fact he has got the common beliefs, and she would very much have subscribed to the bulk of them, I would think that she would be admiring his leadership.
It's a bit of Maggie in MAGA then, isn't it?
Well, leadership is, whether it's being whatever, it's a leader, prime minister or president of the United States or whatever, these are necessarily lonely jobs. And it's right, they should be. But on the other hand, he's doing a great job, and time will tell the level of success that he's going to have. But I mean, he is clearly he's achieving more in a relatively short space of time in his first presidency, or since he became president.
You see sort of shades of your mother's premiership in there, without the gap in between. A sort of slightly rocky start, but then got there. Moved fast and broke a lot of things very quickly in the middle.
It's not for me to comment on how he's doing things in the United States at all.
Yeah, but you think the world needs a bit more of that sort of sticking to your values. Call me old-fashioned, doing, saying you're going to do something at an election and then naturally doing it, even if you disagree with it or not.
Well, I know. I think, look, I remember very well when my mother became Prime Minister. Very well. She had a very clear idea of what she wanted to do from the legislative's perspective. I mean, there were. I remember many meetings and a whole load of principles which came to be called the stepping stones, actually. So she knew exactly what she wanted to do when she arrived in Downing Street. And I think that's perhaps not necessarily the case all the time today.
Well, yeah, I was going to pick you up on that. I mean, we haven't seen a premiership last. Well, Tony Blair did, but his impact, I think the jury is still out a little bit on. What is missing from the current crop of politicians that your mother brought to the table?
I think belief. I mean, I think she would be very surprised that the Prime Minister of the day wanted to be Prime Minister or even leader of the party. I think she'd be very surprised that he actually doesn't believe in anything. Not seemingly so, certainly at the moment. And I think that's very important. You need to have a very clear idea of what you believe in. And I think, that from that comes leadership.
And so if you don't have that central tenet, that central driving force, and I don't think anyone, I don't think even Keir Starmer, as you say, would say he has he has, a sort of Starmerism. There is no Starmerism, is there? Like there was.
Well, there wasn't Thatcherism for the first 2 or 3 years of my mother's premiership. It was an extremely tricky time.
Yes.
But nevertheless, she knew exactly what she wanted to do. Inflation was running at 7 to 15%, and interest rates were high because we needed to get it down. So the first couple of years were extremely tricky. And I remember her being quite concerned about it. But on the other hand, she was absolutely convinced there was only one course of action, and this was it.
Did she ever? Did she almost double down because it was rocky, or did she ever think, if I don't do?
No, I think she had a clear idea, absolutely a clear idea of what she wanted to do. There was no question about that, and she had a good group of people around her also. Extremely helpful, believed in what she wanted to achieve, and so it worked very well. But it wasn't easy. But then again, it shouldn't necessarily be easy. That being the leader of Her Majesty's government is not an easy job. It wasn't meant to be.
When the world is extremely different from when your mother was in power, and even to her passing 12 years ago, the world has changed dramatically. We've had countless PMs, as we've discussed. Britain's leads the EU. How would you think she would see Britain's place in the world today, both socially, economically, and actually morally? Three things.
Well, I mean, I think economically, I think there's, I can't remember exactly, but I think I'm right in saying that no socialist government, no Labour government has ever left power with less unemployed people than they started their term. And so clearly their approach to economic policy isn't being successful, especially when it comes to employment. I think we need to get back to much more of a market-based economy and market-based policies. I'm not saying that because my mother is my mother, but I'm just saying those are the facts. If you look at how policies are applied during her government and the successes that it had, it doesn't seem to be working as it should be. So I think a little bit more Thatcherism might be useful.
I can't see her having much truck with, not to tell you, but I can't imagine, almost half of day-to-day spending by the end of this decade is going to be on the health service. There are millions of people languishing on sickness benefit in a bill that's essentially going to hit 100 billion by the end of this a year by the end of this decade. Those are not sustainable.
No, I don't think that they are. And I don't think that the approach, in my mother's view, would be that the approach should be to get a control on spending rather than increase taxation. The taxation in the present scenario, 10% of the nation's tax. Is let me get this right. 10% of the population pays 61% of the nation's tax. And so the idea that the continuing socialist dream of wealth redistribution doesn't work. And I don't have to say it doesn't work. It's a fact. People are fleeing the country now to avoid increasingly high levels of taxation. And I don't think that can be a good thing.
Well, exactly. I mean, how in terms of actually, you're into a doom loop then, aren't you? The taxpayers, the top 10% of taxpayers leave, and then you raise taxes and force more people to leave.
Well, I think it's a vicious circle. I mean, it's not for me to comment on how the Chancellor is going to and what the Chancellor is going to do or say in the coming days. But it's clearly obvious that if you increase the rate of taxation, the yield, which is to say the total amount of money which is gathered by taxes, will fall. It has to. And if that's the case necessarily, then this time next year, the Chancellor will, whoever he or she is, or even if it's the same, will be faced with the same conundrum: what to do next. And the only thing is to get a grip on spending.
But good luck to that, I'd say. It wasn't just the socialists, though, was it? It wasn't just the Labour governments. The last Tory government brought taxes up to the highest burden since the war. Yes, they had a pandemic, but it wasn't just that. These spending plans, the size of the state and the spending got out of control under.
Yes. I mean, clearly. By the way, taxation as a percentage of GDP went up in my mother's first 18 months of government because it necessarily had to. But the policies have to be in place to in the medium term to control spending. There doesn't seem to be any discussion about controlling spending at the moment, rather than filling the black hole which is spending produces.
What about the other issue of the time in terms of population size increasing, immigration? Again, I can't imagine a Thatcher premiership having a much truck with thousands of illegal immigrants crossing the channel in small boats every
Yes,
every
I
day.
mean, it's a mystery to me why, and a mystery to many people, why these people should come all the way across Europe, safe countries in Europe, secure countries in Europe, trying to cross the channel to get to the United Kingdom, when there are many other equally safe places for them to reside. And one is forced to the conclusion that they do that because once they arrive on the beaches here, they're going to be given a wide range of financial supports from the first day. And that has to stop. That has to stop.
Do you think it's a pull factor?
Well, I think it's substantial. I think it's a substantial pull factor. I think that people are being encouraged to come across or half of southern Europe and France and Germany, all those sort of places, to get to the United Kingdom, because when they get here, the prize on the beach is bigger. And my mother used to believe very strongly that before one should one should make a contribution to our society, make a contribution to the nation in which they live, before they should be permitted or allowed to draw upon the benefits of being a member of that society. And I think everybody's got it upside down. We simply have to stop spending in the way we are on social programs. Otherwise, eventually they will stop. They will have to stop because the arithmetic will simply not allow it anymore. So it's better to do it at a time of your own choice than have it forced upon you. Otherwise, we'll be at the IMF.
Yeah. You think that's a possibility of the coming years?
Well, there are far more intelligent political commentators than I who have already suggested that seems to be that's the way that it's going. And I don't know a great deal about it, but I know enough of, I can count, yeah, And if you look upon it, if families ran their financial affairs in the same way that governments run their financial affairs, they would all be facing acute difficulties.
One of the things that binds the hands of multiple successive governments is the European Convention on Human Rights, in terms of being able to stop boats, as you say, stop people coming over the channel, and then deporting them if they do get here, and not least because of some of those benefits that they are afforded. They can claim they face destitution under the ECHR. How do you suspect your mother would have said, enough of that, thank you, we'll walk away? And it's an issue of our times that politicians seem to be...
the whole issue of immigration, the whole issue of illegal immigration and refugees is not an easy one to manage.
No.
And my mother was never a great fan of large multinational organisations. That is not to say that the ECHR doesn't have a right and proper role to play. It does. But most importantly, any nation's ability to assist others is based upon their ability to afford it and to pay. And it's critical that those laws are applied. Otherwise, our ability to continue to do it would be curtailed. So it's not for me to comment on the ECHR, and I know that you would love me to do so. No, it's a problem. But these people are coming across 3 or 4 safe countries to get here, and the prize is when they arrive on the beaches, they're getting far too much financial assistance.
Yeah, I'm based in DC, and when people learn about that, they are baffled. They are.
Well, the thing about the ECHR in many ways is the same as socialism, isn't it? Socialism is a wonderful thing until other people's money runs out.
Couldn't have put it better myself. Talking of large multinational organisations, obviously your mother had a sort of mixed relationship with Europe over the years. Started out as I remember the picture of her in the flag jumper, extolling the benefits of the EEC. Do you have any doubt that she would have voted to leave the European Union by the end?
I'm asked that question greatly and a lot. My mother's relationship with Europe generally can be summarised very simply, in my estimation. She was a great supporter of any role or any organisation in which trade was encouraged. Cross-border trade was encouraged, because the more trade you have, the more jobs that come, and the whole economy expands, GDP expands, and everybody gains from that. And when that happens, if governments have got more money in receiving taxation, then there's more money to spend on hospitals, pensions, and things and the like. So whilst it was an economic community, she was wholly in support of it. She became less enthusiastic when it became a political union.
Yes.
Because there were two reasons for that. She didn't like large amorphous masses of government in the first place, and the other thing was that she was deeply conscious of the fact that our Parliament has an extraordinary history going back hundreds of years, and she firmly believed that our Parliament in Westminster should be the one that actually governs the nation and not Brussels. I mean, in 1990, when she left Downing Street, I think fully 35% of Parliament's business time was taken up by passing legislation required by the European Union. And that was just too much. And so would my mother have voted to leave the EU? Yes. In my estimation.
Even as one of the architects of the single market itself, the political union had gone too far.
The debate within her mind would have been: is the potential losses of economic benefits a price that she would afford to pay in respect of recovering our sovereignty over Parliament and the management of our own political and financial affairs. Bearing in mind, of course, that we're one of the few countries in Europe which have our own currency. I mean, I was in Hungary recently, where they've got the forint, and they're not about to give it up.
No.
Nor would we. I mean, it would be absolutely catastrophic if anybody ever considered anything other than the support of sterling.
Even Tony Blair eventually got there in the end on that one with a little help. On Brexit more broadly, and your thoughts really, rather than trying to ascertain what your mother would have thought. But it hasn't. The Brexit project itself has been sort of frustrated, and the benefits of it haven't exactly been grabbed forthright, have they?
Well, I mean, I think the benefits of it were clear for everybody to see, and everybody was prospering as a member of the European Economic Community when everybody was managing their own political affairs and cooperating on financial affairs and trade. Clearly, there would be, and there are, benefits for cooperations in defence policy, as in NATO and all that sort of stuff. That's fine. But I think moving towards political union and I always found it extraordinary that in a time when the Soviet Union was collapsing, because it was a large, multinational, amorphous mass of a wide range of nationalities being forced together into the Soviet Union, at the exact moment in time when the Soviet Union was collapsing, because the nationalities and the countries there wanted their own representation, Europe was trying to do exactly the opposite, which was agglomerate all of the European countries together into a single amorphous mass. So the Soviet Union was collapsing, and Europe is trying to do exactly the same thing that Russia that was happening. I always thought that was extraordinary.
Did your mother? Was that a point your mother had made? That
I don't necessarily think so, but it just was I'm sorry, I probably haven't described it in the right
I get exactly what you mean.
But I mean, I think it was the Soviet Union was falling apart for exactly the same reasons that Europe was trying to make itself bigger.
Not really learning the lessons of history.
No. I mean, I think, and the basic fundamental issue about British institutions is the family, not the state.
Do you see anyone in this country? We're going to talk about the future of the Conservative Party later on, but do you see anyone in the political world, recent political world, who could have turned it around, or are you in slightly despair at the current crop?
That's a really interesting question, and one I've not necessarily thought about. I think that, I mean, political history is cyclical, if you see what I'm saying. I mean, if you look back at the history of the United Kingdom since the Second World War, there would be most political or historical commentators see there were two large and remarkable leaders, Winston and my mother. But the circumstances allowed them to become what they were, if you will. And then there was an extraordinary time in the United States when Reagan was a very powerful leader. But equally, in my mother's time in Downing Street, there was strong German and French leadership, particularly, and I think everybody benefited from it. We do need strong leaders. It doesn't necessarily mean to say that they all have to have the same beliefs. Clearly, it's helpful if they do, but we do need leadership in the West, and society needs leadership, and we're incredibly lucky to have a monarchy here because and the royal family here do an amazing job, and they do lead, and they do it very, very successfully.
But there's no government has become too technocratic and too wishy-washy, you might put it.
That's circumstances.
So Mark,
then we will eventually, I'm sure we will discuss that in a moment.
So Mark Thatcher, stay there. We're going to go to a short break. Coming up, the future of the Tory party and what it's like behind the scenes of that black door of number 10. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Harry Cole Saves the West. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. You will see lots of exclusive content on there. Search Harry Cole Saves the West on YouTube. Still with me in a remarkable interview is Sir Mark Thatcher, the son of Britain's possibly greatest Prime Minister, certainly post-war, Margaret Thatcher. What was it like? This reputation of this woman that the whole world knows as the Iron Lady. But for you as your mother, and in various interviews occasionally, you've called her the boss. Oh. Is that about right?
Well, yeah, I used to happily refer to her as the boss, because in many ways she was. When my mother became Prime Minister, I wasn't living in Downing Street, but I, for a wide range of reasons, was encouraged to go there. What was it like? It was. The point is that as you always used to call it, living above the shop, you were never off the job, so to speak. We would the flat in Downing Street was on the top floor under the eaves, and even though she was up there and I was up there from time to time, or my father was, there would be a knock on the door and somebody would come in and say, "Oh, this is the hot box, Prime Minister. You need to look at it now," even if it was 10:30 at night.
The red phone always ringing at some point, right?
Well, you're never off the job, but she loved it. She was very good at it. She enjoyed doing it. There was a lot of pressure, but there should be, if you see what I'm saying.
How did she cope with that pressure, especially as Britain's first female Prime Minister? We live in a different age now of social media and the like, but the attacks were, must.
Well, that's a very interesting point because the way in which your communication industry and journalism and television worked then is just so completely different from today's digital age. Neither of my parents ever had a digital phone, because they didn't exist. iPads and computers were relatively, they didn't play a portable laptops and things didn't play a role in life at all. So the way we all got our information was completely different. She used to wake up in the morning and listen to the farming news at 6 o'clock, and that told her what was going on in the agricultural world. So it was different, but in when I was there, the whole place had a sort of certain rhythm to it, if you see what I'm saying. She dealt with pressure very well, as long as she felt she was winning the battle of ideas. Clearly when she arrived in Downing Street in her first term, there were certain things that she wanted to do that she didn't feel that she could do or achieve politically. And many people have written about that. And there was always lots to do.
Do you ever think she ever, at any point, thought, "Why am I doing this?"
No, I don't think so. No, I don't think so, because if you are elected, if you're elected leader of the party, which she was, and then the country decided to invest their trust in her as leader, you can't just say, "Oh, I don't feel like doing it anymore." You have to do what you are asked to do, and you were elected to do, and entrusted to do. And it is terribly, terribly important. I remember I was in Downing Street when the Falklands War was on.
It must have been extraordinary.
It was extraordinary.
Front row seat in history.
My mother, I remember I was there when news of the Sheffield arrived, where it was the first, I think,
Casualties.
Special loss of servicemen's lives. And my mother was profoundly moved by that. And who wouldn't be, by the way? Thank God that she was.
Yes.
But she was profoundly moved by that, and was thinking immediately of all the families and people who had been affected. And this was a price that she knew that she was going to have to pay in doing what she decided was necessary to do. But it was not easy.
You think these are qualities you were born with rather than you can acquire over a lifetime?
Look, I'm sure there are far more intelligent people who will be able to write and comment on what makes leaders. My own view is that, you have to have a certain personality. You have to have a certain self-confidence, not an overconfidence, a certain self-confidence, and the determination to pursue it.
How did it feel for you and Carol, though? Talking of being born into it, you didn't choose this life. What was it like? You weren't young, you weren't young.
No,
but
we weren't young. I was 25 when Mum became leader or whatever.
Yeah, but you were under a lot of scrutiny.
Yeah, I mean, looking back on it, there were moments when it wasn't easy, of course. When I was in Downing Street, there were quite, I wouldn't say restrictions, but I was sort of required to behave in a certain way, all of which was absolutely fine. I think looking back on it, I would say that it's a difficult thing to describe, but I would say I was enriched by what I saw. I was enriched by what I witnessed. Yes, because it was extraordinary. And I learned a great deal. So if you said, was it a good thing or a bad thing?
Yeah.
I would say, from my perspective, without a shadow of a doubt, I was incredibly fortunate to have been placed in that position for whatever reason. And there were moments when it was difficult. Of course.
When you went missing in 1982, driving across the Sahara, I bet the boss gave you a rollicking mare.
The point is, look, by the way, we can say many, many things about it, and Thierry Sabine sadly died a couple of years after that. There was a lot of confusion at the time, what was going on, and of course that is made things particularly difficult. And at the end of the day, my mother reacted as a mother. Yes, she wanted to know exactly that her family was safe. The fact that the whole thing became
global media circus,
diplomatic
circus.
Your words, not mine, made it more difficult. More difficult. Yes, of course.
Did you feel like you'd Did you feel like you'd let it down, or how did it feel?
Well, of course. By the way, it doesn't matter for what reason. It is this. But if any child causes their mother to shed a tear, is a deeply and profoundly moving moment, if you see what I'm saying. Yes. And
did you ever feel you overstepped the mark, though? You've been accused before. We won't dwell on it all, but just generally, as a son of a prime minister, your critics have said that you traded on her name. And do you ever feel you ever overstepped the mark?
Well, we can spend a lot of time doing it. The point is that when I was, first of all, I was required to go and live in Downing Street.
Yes.
For national security reasons. My father rang me up one day and said, "You're in here on Saturday." Literally. And I didn't know why, and of course history answered those questions later on. But there was no rule book at the time, if you see. There was no set of guidelines or anything else about being a relatively young family member, having to live in Downing Street, and how to live. And so it was very much, it was difficult. And so everything that was slightly uncertain, but at the same time I had a job and I had to do it.
Did you feel like you had the sort of support of the sort of debate that's still raging now about, prime ministers have all this support, but their families and spouses and
well,
children?
I feel very strongly. Tony Blair's children were in Downing Street when he was there, and I know that his family have also been in receipt of some criticism. Whether it's right or whether it's wrong, I absolutely don't know. But information technology as it is today, and demand for new and fresh news and all this sort of thing all the time, where there are so many new digital outlets, there's greater pressure to do it.
Yeah.
I think it's important that we should be allowed. I mean, I think it's important that our nation should be allowed freedom of the press, and I think that's very important, freedom of expression in every possible sense. And if that's the price that has to be paid, well, that's the price that has to be paid. But I think it's very important that we should not have any form of national legal censorship. I think their censorship needs to be perhaps of taste, but no, I think that's very important.
A price you were willing to pay for
emphatically. Yes.
Have you always thought that, or have you slightly mellowed it over the years?
No, I think the point is this: if you believe in a set of principles, if you see what I'm saying, yes, you believe in them. For instance, I mean, and if you believe in them, then you have to accept for what they are, and they don't provide good news internally. So it's all cyclical. It's all cyclical, and that's the way it works.
Talking of the political cycle, and cyclical, the Tory party took a big old tonking last year. 14 years of power, mixed reviews, as we've discussed previously. Kemi Badenoch, every sort of Tory leader wants to sort of channel Thatcher. Does it ever get on your nerves seeing people trying to define Thatcherism or trying to put themselves in your mother's shoes?
Well, no, I don't. Does it annoy me? No. I mean, I think, first of all, I mean, Kemi Badenoch, I mean, there are very real comparisons between the moment when my mother became leader of the party and when she became leader of the party. We've just had in 1974, there was a 3-day working week, and we just had a fairly big tonking in the 94 election, the 74 election, yes. And that created an environment in which the party was ready for a different style of leadership. And that's how my mother became leader. I think there are certain comparisons between that period in 1974 and the last election, if you see what I'm saying. And so from that particular perspective, she would be supporting the leader of the party because she's doing the best she can.
Do you see any shades of your mother's? You talk about having principles and morals and a vision. Do you see that in the current Tory party?
Well, that's a national debate. I mean, I think whether Conservative. I think there is a very close link. And you use the word Thatcherism. I mean, there's a close link between conservatism and Thatcherism. And I think they're absolutely the case. And I think my mother would be pleased and reassured that we are continuing to have a debate about Thatcherism, and in doing so, about the propagation and perpetuation of the policies which she regards as so absolutely essential.
But does Kemi Badenoch have that star quality you talk about that your mother had, to pick up the mantle, to pick up the torch of Thatcherism and run?
I don't think she's doing a bad job. It's particularly difficult at the moment. There are a wide range of issues and challenges that she faces. Don't forget, in the first couple of years of my mother's leadership, it wasn't all plain sailing at all. There was a lot to be done.
Yeah. What would your mother have made of Nigel Farage and his particular style of politics? Because he certainly has a star quality, doesn't he? But what would she have made of Farage, do you think?
Well, I mean, I've never met him, but he strikes me as being an extremely charming guy. He believes strongly in what he believes in. My mother would have respected him for his beliefs, without a shadow of a doubt. He is a politician. Whatever you say about him, he's a belief politician. And that is a good thing. I mean, as long as we're allowed to have a debate in our society about the beliefs that we hold, it can only be a good thing. He believes strongly about it. My mother would have agreed with his views about the size of illegal immigration today, and she would have wanted to tackle those issues as he does. Whether or not the approach to tackling those issues is the same, yes, remains to be seen. It's too early to tell or to suggest what's going to happen. I know he's saying he's going to do
repatriate. Well, he's at 31% in the polls, 32% in the polls. Looks like he could well be heading to Downing Street.
I remember one particular moment in time my mother was asked what she thought about the polls. The first question was, how long to the next election? And I think somebody said, well, a couple of years, Prime Minister. And she said, well, if we're only 10 points behind, that's not enough. It's all cyclical. It's all cyclical. I'm pleased, and she would be pleased, that we're having the debate about immigration, because it is and has always been one of the most difficult issues to resolve.
The Tory party obviously is it's been reduced to a rump in the Commons. Reform are on 31-32% in the polls. A split right in this country would lead to a continued, on paper, would lead to a continued Labour government. That's how Labour got that majority last year, with the right being split. Can you envisage a world where the right is united and comes back together?
I can see absolutely no purpose at all in discussing what's going to happen with the left, the right, the middle, or the up or the down, 3 years away from a general election.
Do you think Keir Starmer will? What's your gut?
It's far too early to tell. I mean, I don't think anybody can say what's going to happen politically. I can't remember who it was. I think it was Harold Wilson said a week is a long time in politics. So trying to predict what's going to happen in the future is for other people.
So stick to the convictions and see what happens then.
Emphatically, I think so. I mean, because my mother believed that policy is the core of her convictions. A man's right to work, to have the state as a servant, not a master. The family is the basic unit of our society. If you stick to those things, then everything else follows. Economic freedom is the most important freedom to have. And from the economic freedom, everything else grows. And so that's the way she would approach it. And she would believe that way today, tomorrow, and in 3 years' time. It's too early to tell what's going on politically. Who knows what's going to happen? I mean, by the way, who would have thought 2 months ago that we were going to have the release of all the hostages in Israel?
Yeah.
And it's absolutely a fantastic day. But 2 months ago, people have said it wasn't going to happen. But it has, and so we have to accept that and be very grateful, and I'm sure many, many families are deliriously happy about it, and rightly so. But you can't foretell 3 years in the future. I would love to be able to, and I'm sure people would try to do so, but in politics, no.
Sir Mark Thatcher, thank you very much.
Harry, thank you very much indeed.